Hi everyone, welcome to another edition of our Leadership Lessons Q&A event series. My name is Alex and I'm the Growth Marketing Manager at OfferZen, and I will be hosting today's session. Before we dive into the event, we have some rules of engagement for the audience. So if you have any questions, please make sure to drop them in the questions tab at any time. We'll make sure to cover them at the end of the session or take it async online. We are recording the session, so you will get the replay link post the event. And the chat is open, so please take a moment to say hi, maybe where you're joining from. And we also want to start with a little bit of an icebreaker if anyone's keen to share maybe a leadership challenge that they're currently facing. Set a bit of the context for the session today. Got some people joining from Cape Town. Hi, Michael. Hi, Sean. It's great to see some repeat names as well. We've been running, I think this is our 7th or 8th session, which is great. We've got Pretoria. Oh, and Netherlands, a fellow Dutchie, I love it. Okay, cool. Amazing. It's so great to see everyone joining from across SA and the world. Let's move on because I think everyone's dying to jump into the conversation. So just a few words about OfferZen. OfferZen is a developer talent marketplace that was founded in Cape Town in 2016. With OfferZen, companies don't just hire, they hire smarter. You can choose to connect with top developers directly through our curated marketplace, or you can go premium with OfferZen Embedded, where a dedicated talent partner joins your team to handle the heavy lifting for you. If this is something that sounds interesting, you can just select from the poll on your screen now. Amazing. Okay, so tech leadership is often lonely, high stakes, and invisible. We host these AMAs to hero tech leadership as a craft. This is your hour to hear how others are navigating challenges, reflect on career-defining moments, and ask your own questions live. Today, we're joined by Riaan Nel, Fractional CTO and mentor to tech leaders at startups and scaleups. He's known for his no-nonsense approach to building high-performing teams and growing engineers into impactful leaders. Let's get Riaan onto the stage. In a few seconds. Hi, Riaan.
Hi, Alex.
How's it going?
Good, thanks. And you? Thanks for having me.
No, it's so great to have you on stage today. Maybe before we dive in, yeah, it's great to have you here. Maybe before we dive in, do you want to share a little bit of introduction?
Sure. I think maybe a quick whirlwind tour of like the last 20 years of my life will set some context. So I think starting with the tech bit that led to tech leadership. So somewhere in my teens, I discovered programming for the first time, and the idea that I could basically take an empty text file, type some code into it, keep on doing that, rinse and repeat, run, compile, and eventually get a system or an application or a piece of software out on the other side that does something meaningful, like that element of creating something from nothing, I think cemented my career choice fairly early on. So in 2008, I started my career as a developer, my first dev job in a small local product company. And ever since then, I've worked in big companies, I've worked in small companies, I've worked in startups and corporates and consulting and mid-sized companies. I've worked across a range of industries, lots of financial services, insurance, agriculture, manufacturing. And in that time, I've also worn many, many different hats. So I started as a developer, and then what happens is if you're a developer and people think you're good at it, at some point someone says, you should probably manage other developers, and then they turn you into a team lead or a tech lead. I've worn that hat. I've been a solutions architect, an enterprise architect, a software architect. I've been a manager of managers. I've been responsible for projects. And eventually I became a CTO as well. And then about a year ago, I launched my own company as a fractional CTO, which means I'm effectively an outsourced IT executive for companies who don't have a full-time CTO. So it might be an early stage startup, they've just built an MVP, they've found product market fit, and they've started scaling. So they need someone to help them do that. Or it could be a company who's not a traditional tech company, they've grown technology in the business to the extent where it actually needs some form of leadership. So I can go in and help them with that. Or it could be someone looking for investment, doing a DD. And then obviously, because I run my own company, I do some more traditional consulting engagements as well. So from time to time dip back into solutions architecture or a bit of development or enterprise architecture, which I think is also handy because as a CTO, you sometimes lose touch with the detail because you don't get close enough to it. So just being able to dip back into that from time to time is always handy. So I think in summary, I've worn many different hats, and even on a daily basis now, I still probably wear 2 or 3 different hats.
I love that because it means that we've got a wealth of knowledge that we're going to unpack in this session.
I've maybe my head many times.
Maybe to give some context to the audience of what we're going to be unpacking. So we're first going to start from your journey from dev to leader, then the mess ups and the milestones you learned along the way, building and leading for the future, and then a 4th theme around no silver bullets, building scalable teams with common sense leadership, which I'm actually really excited about that theme. And again, to the audience, we're going to have lots of time for your questions. So please make sure to pop them in the questions tab throughout. We'll get to them at the end. And we are also going to be giving away some OfferZen swag for those who are pretty active and engaging throughout the session. So make sure to ask away and banter a little bit in the chat. Okay, cool. Now that admin is out of the way, let's dive into the conversation. Theme number 1, the journey from dev to leader. From software engineer to fractional CTO, your path wasn't linear, as you just explained. Let's hear about the moments that nudged you towards that leadership and really shaped your approach that you use today. Was there really a defining moment or challenge that pushed you toward leadership, maybe before you felt ready?
I think, interestingly, in my example, and looking back on my career, the first time someone actually offered me a formal leadership role, I turned it down. I just did not feel ready for it at that stage. And it was one of those scenarios where kind of you're part of a team, you start as a junior in the team, you work your way up, and eventually you would have to manage people who used to be your seniors at one point. And that to me at that stage was actually just too intimidating. Like I wanted to get my head down and still build software, which I think to me leads into a point that often frustrates me about our industry, which is this idea that we position leadership as being the next logical step for someone in a technical role. We go like, you're a good developer. Now we want you to become a leader. If you don't do that, so you can't get a better title, you can't get more prestige, you can't get more money, like this is the only thing that you can do. And I think what happens in the process when companies do that is not everyone necessarily wants to be in leadership, and not everyone necessarily will be good at it. It's a fundamentally different skill set from what allows you to succeed as a technologist. And then like you turn really good, happy engineers into frustrated and mediocre managers. And the other danger in that as well is the blast radius of a bad manager is just so much worse than a bad engineer.
Sure. Very, very true. I maybe want to ask, were you ever ready to move into leadership? Like, is there
So I think for me, it almost emerged more organically because there's also this idea of like someone can tell you formally, we're going to make you a leader now. Or over time, and it's this idea of French and Raven's models of power, and you can have authoritative power because someone said you're the boss, or you can have coercive power because you get to fire someone, or you've got reward power because you can give them a bonus, or you just have like expert referential power because you actually establish yourself as someone that people can look up to and that people want to work with, and almost organically it emerges that people start taking guidance from you. So I think my formal shift into leadership was almost more along those lines where like I found myself just becoming a leader without really planning for it. And then when the opportunity came along again, it was like, okay, cool. Actually, I think I can do this. Let me try it.
I love that. Maybe when you first stepped into leadership, what's one thing you thought would be easier than it actually turned out to be?
Giving up control. Because what happens is, again, this typical journey of you are good at the technical thing that you do, and therefore we make you a manager. Like every step in your career, and whether that is just from junior dev to intermediate dev to senior dev, or from senior into a manager role, or into a lead role, or a manager of managers, or whatever, is the thing that gets you there is really just the price of admission. The fact that you're a good senior engineer is not going to make you a good manager, which then leads to, I call it the problem, I learned the term from a previous CTO as well, of trying to code yourself out of trouble. because you take on this new job. You get the job because you're actually really good at the technical stuff. And now when you've got a problem, like this one tool that you've got is code. So your requirements are a mess, like I'm just going to code through the night. Or my team member isn't doing their job, let me just pick it up and code everything for them. Okay. Which, as a new manager, is how you get yourself to burn out very quickly and conclude that management sucks and it's not a job you ever want to do.
Yeah.
So I think I often write about like leadership, and I think pretty much every single mistake that I've warned against is probably one that I've made myself at some point in my career.
But that's how you learn. And I think that's going to be very interesting for theme number 2. But, if you could go back and give junior dev Riaan some advice before making that leap into leadership, what would that be?
Don't feel too panicked when you get thrown into the deep end. I think something that has actually helped me in my career is I found myself in the deep end quite often. I don't know what I did to deserve that. And it's not nice in the moment, but I think reflecting back on that after the fact, you just learn so much when you are pushed out of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
So I think don't shy away from the opportunities that push you out of your comfort zone. And looking back at, not taking that first leadership opportunity, the mistake that people make as well is we almost look at these decision points in our careers as being absolutes. It's like you get to a point when someone says you can be a manager now, and then you feel like either you've got to take that path now and stay there forever, or you've got to choose against it and never go there, which is just like, it's this almost sense of loss that makes absolutely no sense. It's like we feel like we can only make the decision once, but the matter of the fact is, like, you can try it. I think everyone should actually try it. If you don't like being in a leadership role, then you go back and you try something else. If you don't like managing people, maybe you want to try your hand at a more specialist tech role. Maybe you're going to try and be an architect or try and be a principal engineer or something like that. But just not getting into this mindset that you have to make a decision now and somehow that decision is going to be forever. Because I think that just leads to bad decisions made at the wrong time as well, because it comes from a place of fear rather than, I want to say, almost experimentation. Like, this is something I want to go and try. I want to see how it works.
But I think that's also a very traditional way of, you've got to kind of just move up this corporate ladder. Whereas nowadays we've got this kind of T-shaped model of you can swing both ways. You can go deep into specialization, but you can also go across and broaden your skills, or you can move into leadership. There's so many ways you can go back and forth between all of it. If it works, if it doesn't, at least then.
Exactly. And I think the companies that get it right are the ones that get to that. Everyone gets to a decision point almost somewhere around senior developer in their career, where you've got to go, do I go into leadership? Do I go into some kind of tech specialist role? And companies that actually present multiple options, and all of them are a step up from where you are right now. So you still get that sense of career growth. It's still a promotion. You still get to try something else. Like, to me, the companies who do really, really well are the ones who get that right from an employee experience point of view.
And I love that, because a lot of the chat is agreeing with you. It's like, don't just quit the company if you've moved into management. If you want to go back and move into different space, open up that conversation. That feedback's important internally. So I'm just putting a little bit from what the audience is saying, which is great. Maybe also a good segue for imposter syndrome, because maybe you've moved into a management role and you're like, oh, this isn't for me. Is it imposter syndrome? Is it actually just, I don't want to do this? I don't know. Was there ever a time that you felt imposter syndrome, and what helped you push through?
I think everyone, in my mind, kind of feels like that at one stage. If you don't feel like that, you're probably not paying enough attention. And I think you might be kind of overinflating your own ego. That's just my take on it. I think looking at, and it's also just reflecting on my own career journey. Like, when I was a junior dev, I thought the senior devs just had all of it together. Like, they knew exactly what they were doing. And then when I got to be a senior dev, it was like, I'm actually figuring this out as I go as well. For the juniors looking at me now, I feel like I've got or they feel like I've got all of it together. But in my mind, like, it's still scary. Like, every step you take where you actually have to do something new it's unfamiliar territory. And I think especially if you're a perfectionist, I'm definitely a perfectionist, which makes a lot of like management or exec level decisions and architecture decisions really, really hard because there is actually no perfect answer. So you've got to kind of just get that out of your mind. I think that also helps with imposter syndrome. And just look at the people around you. Like, I think everyone probably struggles just as much when you start talking to them and you go, like, this is how I feel. Chances are someone's going to go, I feel exactly like that, but I thought you had it all together.
Yeah.
It's like doing a talk or something. Like, you're up on stage, everyone looks at you and goes, wow, like that guy must be great because he gets to be up there and talk about it. And he looks so confident. And you're standing up there going like,
I'm just sharing.
I'm scared and nervous, and what's everyone going to think?
No.
There was, I digress a bit, but there was a very interesting study that I read once, and I've been trying to find it. Like, I don't know who did it or where it was. If anyone has a link, please just send it to me. But it may have been in one of Malcolm Gladwell's books. And what they did was they took someone who was an expert on something arbitrary, let's say like aquarium fish or whatever, and they put them next to someone who knew nothing about that particular topic. And I think they had the expert quiz the other person on this thing they know nothing about. So the other person kind of felt like an idiot, but the conclusion that people came to was that the expert, even though I just know that they're an expert in this one thing, must somehow overall be a lot smarter than they are. Like, it's this whole misguided perception. Just because you see one thing that someone is good at, we kind of assume that they must be great at everything. So I think just being aware of kind of your own cognitive bias as well. I really enjoy reading about psychology and behavioral economics. I think that helps me deal with kind of how I see things as well, because you get a more objective kind of perspective on it.
I love that. Thanks for sharing. I'm keen to move on to theme number 2, the mess-ups and the milestones. So you've written about the importance of accountability and learning both from wins and failures. Those lessons often come with moments that test your resilience, when things don't go to plan, or when a good decision pays off. Can you share a time when something went wrong under your leadership, how you owned it, and what did you learn from it?
The first time that I became a manager of other managers, I think I saw my role very much as, and I speak about this in the Silver Bullet conversation as well, in that article I wrote about, you always want to do this or you never want to do that. Like, I wanted to be a coach and a mentor and help people grow. And the net result of that was I actually took too long to give someone some really critical feedback, because I was trying to gently nudge them and go, what about this? And what about this? And why don't you try that? When actually I should have just sat them down and went, listen, you're making a mess of things. This isn't going to end well. Stop what you're doing and do this instead. So it's at, like, as a formally appointed manager, like, your job is actually to tell people what to do. Like, I think often we don't like that. We don't want to do it because like, if you look at how managers versus leaders are represented, even just like webcomics, like the manager is almost this cruel taskmaster, evil type person that no one likes. And the leader is like this heroic figure. And somehow we see them as two different things. But like I said, literally your job is sometimes to tell people what to do. And as a new leader, don't forget about that part of your job. It's actually quite important.
Very, very true. And it's a fine line to balance between helping and coaching people, but then also just being like, hey, this is enough.
Exactly. There's a very good book called Radical Candor that I think really helps with that. And one of the things it says is challenge directly, but still care deeply. And then the flip side of that is what the author calls ruinous empathy. Like, you really care about someone, but you're not challenging them. And I think just that phrase, ruinous empathy, just says so much. Like, if you're not having the hard conversations, it's actually really damaging for the people who depend on you.
Very true. We also know that leadership walls are real. What's been one of the toughest challenges you've had to navigate, and what tools or mindset has helped you through this?
Leadership can be lonely. I think especially if you look at the kind of standard corporate ladder, it goes like that. Like, there are fewer and fewer people at your peers, I think, kind of become fewer and fewer as you move up the ladder. If you've got a team of 20 people you can go and vent to, that's great. if you're the boss, you don't really have anyone to go and vent to. So I think being able to find kind of that trusted person that in the old days when we still had offices, like you can just pull them into your office and vent for 30 minutes and then feel better and carry on with your life again. Being able to do that, I think, is really important. And I think, as a side note, just for a leader, something I've often had to do is literally just allow someone to come into my office and vent and get things out of their system, and then we can move on again with life. So that safe space for just actually getting frustration out with no judgment is important.
I love that. What's a learned the hard way lesson that now shapes how you build and lead teams?
I think, again, the point around trying to retain too much control. If you make yourself a bottleneck as a leader, then your team can't function without you. Everything comes down to you. It also speaks to company cultures in some ways. Like, I've been on teams where people who reported to me didn't want to send an email without me proofreading it and checking it first. So it's like, seriously, you're not going to end the world by having a type in an email. Just send it off. Don't depend on me for everything. Like, trust yourself. And I think as a leader, just creating that environment where people know that it's a safe space, they don't need to be super dependent on you for everything, because the road that leads to is burnout. And just trying to do everything for everyone, not being able to trust people, like that's something you've got to unlearn very quickly as a leader. Like, you now depend on other people. You can no longer do all of it yourself. So for me, a hard one lesson is literally, if you don't get that right, that's the road to burnout.
Off the cuff, do you maybe have some tips for the audience in how to create those spaces within teams?
So one of the things that I quite like to do is, when I talk to anyone on a team that I lead, like, the way that I would phrase a question is, tell me why I'm wrong. Tell me what I'm missing. Tell me what I didn't consider here. Is make it known that it's okay to provide what would be seen as negative or critical feedback. I think provide a safe space for your people, and just, again, like, if you as a leader can be somewhat vulnerable at times as well, other people know that they can do the same. So it's almost a case of leading by example. It's a bit of a cliched phrase, but just really making sure that people know that they have a voice. Yeah, I think that's important.
Makes total sense. Looking back, what's a milestone you're most proud of, and what made it work so well?
It actually, I think, flows nicely out of the conversation we just had. So the very first time that I became a team lead, I had someone on my team who was very quiet, very shy, would never speak up about anything. And, like, personality-wise, being quiet and shy is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But what I did was I put them in charge of code quality. So kind of their job was to monitor our SonarQube metrics, make sure we're not taking code base a step back from where it should be. And one of my proudest moments was when they actually came up to me because I made a code change that they didn't like. And they were like, you did this. You have to go and fix it because this is not what we need. So just like getting someone from almost never saying anything to anyone in the team to actually coming up to me as the leader of the team and challenging me, like that to me was just such a big win in terms of the culture that I wanted in the team.
Oh, that's awesome to hear. And good way to end theme number 2. Moving on to theme number 3. And I'm super conscious because we've got about 20 questions sitting in the audience tab. Like, I'm just seeing that number go up. So I'm trying to move along a little bit faster so we can hopefully tackle everything. Building and leading for the future. Leadership isn't just about today. It's about preparing teams for challenges ahead. You've written about adapting your leadership style, mentoring others, and focusing on fundamentals over fads. As a fractional CTO, you often jump into companies with varying team cultures. Can you recall a time where your first impression of a team was completely wrong, and how that shaped how you onboard future teams?
I think I'm actually quite proud of the fact that I can say I don't think that's happened to me as a fractional CTO. And I think the reason it hasn't happened is because I only started this fractional CTO thing I think after I learned many lessons and got to mature as a leader as well, and got to the point where I realized that you probably shouldn't make snap judgments. Like the first time you see a team or you see a product, and actually just like when I start on a new engagement as well, like I often just try and sit quietly for a while and see what's happening around me, what are people doing, why are they doing it in that way, before just going like, this is my opinion, this is why you're wrong, this is what you should be doing, because everything is a product of context as well. Like whatever looks like a really weird thing from the outside that a team's doing, if you go and look at why they are doing it like that, there's probably a good reason for it. Now, it doesn't mean that that reason is always valid and that you can't question it and change it. But I think just avoiding that very quick judgment up front helps a lot, because it also means you go into it with an open mind rather than going, I already know what the problem is, so I'm just going to wait for you to stop talking so I can tell you how to fix it. It's like, I actually want to listen to what you have to say. And if I reserve my judgment, then it means I'm gonna pay more attention to what you're saying, because I don't have an opinion yet. So I'm not going to disregard everything you're saying because I've already formed my conclusion.
It's also very low ego in how you approach things. Awesome. What's your leadership North Star, that one principle that's non-negotiable for you, no matter the situation?
I think humility, and basically just keeping an open mind. And then, of course, treating people with respect. Like you can disagree, you can argue, you can fight, but you can do so respectfully. And being able, again, like I said earlier, being able to go to someone and say, listen, tell me why I'm wrong. That to me, I think makes for a good leader. There's another leadership book that I quite like called Turn the Ship Around. I don't know if anyone's read it, but it's by a former submarine captain. And one of the things he highlights is for a leader to be able to say, I don't know. Now, if it's scary for me in a tech company to say, I don't know, imagine what that must be like for a military submarine commander with all of these like really, really hectic stereotypes, and like you must be the boss and you must be in control and you must know everything. So I mean, if someone like that can say, listen, you should be open and willing to say, I don't know, I think that's good advice to take. And interestingly, in his example, he didn't actually know, because he trained to work on one submarine and then got assigned to a completely different one. So he tells a story about looking at a keypad with one of the sailors, and he asks the sailor, what does that button do? And the guy like very reluctantly goes, well, I don't know, Captain, what does it do? And he has to go, well, I don't know either.
Okay, so we're going to have to read the book to figure out how they navigated that.
It's definitely worth reading. I can highly recommend it.
We'll add to the list. If you had to bet on one skill or mindset every future tech leader should master, what would it be and why?
I think continuous learning, and not becoming overly attached to a single idea. So when I wrote about the silver bullets in leadership, I spoke about this thing called situational leadership. And I think where leaders go wrong, especially if it's like early in your leadership journey, is we form this opinion of who we want to be as a leader. So maybe at some point you had a manager who said, you don't get to do any of the thinking. I'm going to micromanage you. I'm going to tell you exactly what to do. And then you go, as a leader, I never want to do that. So I'm always going to give people freedom and flexibility. Or you had a leader who gave you that freedom and flexibility, and things went wrong. And you say, I'm always going to tell people what to do. I think the skill to actually look at a situation and go, this type of leadership is appropriate here right now. And not trying to find that silver bullet. That to me is key. Because I mean, if you've got a team with like the greatest expert the world has ever known in a particular piece of technology, and you have to manage them, you can point them at the problem and you can go do the work. You're smart enough, you know how to do it, you've got the experience, just go do it. But at the same time, if you employ a team of graduates and you go, you're smart, you know exactly what you're doing, like we hired you for that, here's the AWS root password, go nuts, that's going to be a really bad idea. So all of it is really just being able to interpret that context and lead appropriately in the context.
Well, it's a great segue to theme number 4, no silver bullets, building scalable teams with common sense leadership. So for the audience, you've been vocal about avoiding silver bullet thinking. There's no one size fits all for building and scaling teams. It's about making smart, pragmatic calls and sticking to the fundamentals that actually work. As a segue leading into this, what's the biggest leadership scaling myth you wish tech leaders would drop?
In my mind, it would actually, and it's literally, there's a book written about this myth. It's called The Mythical Man Month, and it was published in the 1970s already. And somehow we still haven't learned the lesson that if you're running behind and you're in trouble, you can't just throw more people at the problem. So to me, I think when people are under pressure and I'm just going to throw more hands at it, that myth around scaling it leads to really bad outcomes, because we think that we're going to speed up delivery, but instead of getting increased output, all we actually get is increased communication over it, and that just makes things a lot worse. So just being cognizant of not trying to scale too quickly, and thinking that more hands will actually speed things up when you've actually got a very different problem.
When scaling a team fast, what is that one non-negotiable you refuse to compromise on?
It would have to be culture. As far as I can, I would actually avoid trying to scale a team too quickly, because I think culture is lost in the process. But then when you do scale, I wouldn't just blindly throw more people at problems, have more squads or more teams or more whatever you want to call them, just working on brand new things. I would probably embed them in existing teams and have them pair program, mob program, literally work with people in the environment, sit right next to them, and learn from them. Not just learn the tech, but learn the culture, learn how to communicate in the company, learn how the context works, and actually just bring them into the team rather than going like, you're a new team, off you go and do your thing.
Because I can imagine that can easily create mini cultures within other cultures, and it can get messy.
To me, maintaining culture when you scale is key. And I think that is, if you scale too quickly, that's probably the first casualty as well. And then there's also the idea of, it's called Dunbar's number. It's about 150. Like if you hit that level, then culture becomes even harder to maintain, because now you can no longer actually try and maintain a personal relationship with everyone. Your organization, your team, your structure is just too big.
Yeah. If you could give one final piece of common sense advice to a new CTO today, what would it be?
I think the CTO role is subjective. And again, the thing that gets you there is not the thing that's going to allow you to succeed. So don't try and code your way out of trouble, and don't depend on the tools that got you there. Read as much as you can, talk to people, go to conferences, do courses or whatever else, but build out that toolbox. But don't get too attached to the idea of one single thing that's going to solve all problems for you. And I think also, as soon as you become a CTO, like the thing to be cognizant of is, sure, you came out of a technology team, but the technology team is no longer your team. Like the executive team is going to be your team now, which means how you position yourself, how you communicate, what you emphasize, all of that is actually going to be fundamentally different. Like I think in looking at myself in a CTO role, I've probably spent, I want to say, as much time with a CEO and CFO as I've done with the actual tech team. And now, because you come from this tech background, suddenly you've got to be able to bridge this gap and talk technology in a way that resonates with the CFO, then take what the CFO said and go and talk finance to a dev team in a way that makes sense to the dev team, but really just being able to actually bridge these gaps, and learning how to do that and going, the thing that got me here is not the thing that's going to make me succeed now. That was really just the price of admission.
So that's a big truth bomb. Do you have any tips on how to do that between?
If you find something that doesn't make sense to you, go and research it, go and read up on it. Like, I think to me, it's always critical to understand the context within which you work. Like if I'm working in, for argument's sake, a fintech, and I've got a dev team building financial solutions, I will happily go to someone and go, like, what's a debit and a credit? How does that work? If you don't know, like, here's a link to an accounting course. Go and do that, figure out the domain, and then come back and we can talk about it. So I think just really doing whatever you can to understand that context, but also putting yourself in someone else's shoes. Like, you are communicating from your perspective, but what is the listener actually looking for? And if the listener is another executive in a completely different department or from a different background, like your technology speak isn't going to resonate with them. So you've got to find a way to present that differently.
I love that. And a great way to end off our kind of pre-prepped questions. I'm keen to spend the next few minutes going through all the questions in the chat. And I will admit, I think this is the most questions we've gotten in a session. So this is really exciting. Let's start with... No pressure. Let's start with Stefan. What's the smallest leadership habit that paid the biggest dividend?
I want to say asking people for feedback in a way that actually frames it as it's okay to be critical. Like, tell me what I'm doing wrong.
Nice. Richard,
if everyone's always just praising you, like, you're not going to get the feedback you actually need.
Makes sense. Richard asks, can you touch on team measurement? What tools have you used and what have you measured?
It is a tricky one. I think everyone remembers that thing on developer productivity a few years ago that held the whole industry up in arms. But for me, I'm probably a bit of a purist around the Agile Manifesto. Like, for me, the right measure of progress is actually working software. And if the team is building working software, that to me is a good reflection on the team. But I think also good old-fashioned engagement surveys and things like that do work quite well. Like, how are people actually doing? And then if you look at, there's another good tech book called Peopleware that talks about really creating the right environment for people to allow them to thrive. And that also, one of the other good quotes in there is, the manager's job is not to make people work, but to make it possible for people to work. So, like, creating that kind of environment, if you can find a way to track that works really well. And then another one that is a little bit more, I want to say, academic and probably a bit more uncommon is something called CMAT. CMAT's actually worked really well for me in the past as well.
Awesome. What is CMAT, if you don't mind explaining what it is?
The software engineering method and theory. It's a framework that has, speaking under correction, probably about 150 different questions defined into these specific categories. And it allows you to get a measure of the health of a software project, looking at how's the team doing, how's the actual software, how's the quality of your specs, what can you track. But I think if there are other tools that anyone in the chat would like to recommend, that would be great as well.
I'm seeing there are some links being dropped, so audience, please share away as well. Okay, let's start with Howie. Fractional and CTO seem like counterintuitive terms. How do you manage to truly dive deeply across various companies or domains while maintaining focus?
So that is tricky, if I'm honest. Like, you don't want to juggle, I want to say, more than 3, maybe 4 clients. And what I often start with is really a kind of a dedicated deep dive to really understand that client's environment, get a sense of how they work, where their challenges are, and then actually have the right context moving forward with an engagement like that. The other thing is, you don't actually want to get too embedded in the company. Like, you don't want to become an operational dependency, because then you actually become damaging. So you want to find the right people to work with, and you want to help them to become better. So the very counterintuitive part, I think, of the fractional CTO business model for me is, success for me means that I've made myself redundant. Like, if a team is at the point where they don't actually need me anymore, then my work is done.
It's a good metric. Okay, let's move on to AI. Robin asks, do you think AI is changing how leaders should think about hiring, i.e. who gets hired? Has it impacted how you think about it?
For me, it's going to be the same answer that I have for AI in almost any context, is that it is a good way to augment human judgment. It's not a replacement for it. So there are these debates around, like, when candidates are doing coding assessments, are they allowed to use AI? Is that cheating? Like, in my mind, if you're going to use it in your job and it's going to make you more productive, by all means, use it in your tech assessment, use it in your screening, but be able to explain exactly what it did and why and how you used it. So if you're going to take like a coding question, stick it into ChatGPT, copy and paste the result, never look at it. If I interview you, I'm probably not going to say yes, because I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions you're not going to have the answers to. But if you can tell me, like, this is how I approached it, this is what I got stuck on, this is how I used AI to solve it, that to me is perfectly fine. It's like, I'm not going to tell someone you're not allowed to read the manual or look at Stack Overflow in your day job. And to me, AI is very much in the same category there.
Awesome.
It's about the toolbox. What can you put in there that's going to be useful?
Very true. Very, very true. Ben, team lead for 2 years. How do you go about encouraging our engineers to upskill and grow?
I feel like I might lack a bit of context to that question, because it could be a team leadership question. It could be an organizational culture question as well. But I think ultimately, like, in terms of people growing in their careers, you own your career growth. Like, your manager or your boss can help you and they can support you, but they can't force you to grow. So I would say offer whatever support you can, have a sit down with people, talk about, like, where do you actually want to be? Like, what part of your job do you enjoy? What part do you not enjoy? Where would you like to go? And then how can we help you get there? I think a related point on that as well, when I do performance reviews, a question that I actually like to ask people is not just what went wrong or what are you struggling with, because it frames as a very negative conversation, but actually asking, what are you proud of? Yeah. Like, what have you done that really resonated and you think this is awesome? Because that also tells me, like, what do you actually enjoy? Like, what do you want to do?
In our performance reviews, we've got a question of, in the last 6 months, what energized you as well? And I think that's like those spaces when people thrive, really cool, where they want to grow. It's also like a similar thing there. It's like, oh, okay, people want to play in that space. How do we create more space for them to do that in the next 6 months?
And then just to close off the question, also having a formal mentorship program works, because then someone can actually put their hand up and go, this is what I want to do, please help me do it. Just creating the space for people to do that.
Love that. Okay. Have you ever worked under a really bad leader or boss, and how did it affect your career? How do you recover from it?
We are fortunate in technology that we actually, on average, I think, are fortunate in that we have more options than many other careers. So if you really, like, if it becomes something that's actually draining to your health, you've got the option of putting your CV out and actually actively looking for something else. Yeah. So working for a really bad boss, that is what I would do. I've been in, like, difficult and frustrating team setups and things in the past. I think the other thing that you need to be able to do as well is not to tie your identity to your job or what your boss thinks of you. It's like, this is me, this is who I am. And yes, at work, you can tell me whatever you want. Like, if you tell me I'm making a mess and I'm a moron, cool, do that. But know that I'm probably going to leave, and I'm probably just going to try and compartmentalize that. And, like, that is not feedback on me as a person. So I'll leave if I get the opportunity, but while I'm there, like, that's your thing, just deal with it. But I'm not gonna, like, pay too much attention to it from my side. I think the other thing that, and this just goes back to the CTO role, is, and it talks to pressure at work as well, like, to maintain your own sanity, chances are, especially in a startup, you're gonna have 10 things that are always gonna be on fire. You are going to be able to deal with at most 2 of them. If you try and do all 10 things are just going to remain on fire, and you're going to drop all the balls and everyone's going to be angry. If you can make that judgment call and go, I'm going to put out these 2 fires, you know for yourself, like you've done the best you can. In practice, everyone's still going to be irritated and angry at you for the other 8 fires that they still see. And no one's going to say anything about the 2 that you've put out because they're not seeing them. But just being able to create that structure and that sanity for yourself and knowing that this is what I can do. This was my judgment call. I've done the best that I can do.
It's all about those boundaries for yourself.
Exactly.
Good segue to burnout. For a developer in a new leadership role, what advice could you provide to prevent burnout and prevent feeling out of place?
Being cognizant of it is the very first step. I think anyone who's ever been close to that point of burnout, like they'll be able to see it coming. And I think as soon as you see it coming again, like reflect on what do you actually need to do differently, but also just being able to actually not try and control everything. I think that is how you prevent yourself from burning out. Like you're in a position then where you have to be able to trust other people. You have to be able to delegate. Not everything is necessarily going to be done in the way that you wanted it to be done, or that you would have done it yourself, because again, you are this great developer, which is now why you're the lead now. But it's probably not going to end the world if someone else does it in the way that they want to do it. So just don't try and inflict the way you would do it onto everyone and go, that's the only acceptable standard. So it's really about just being able to distance yourself from, I have to do all this work, to other people can do this work. And even if they don't do it in the way that I would have done it, I can give them some feedback. Like if they get it horribly wrong, I'm going to tell them, listen, you're getting it horribly wrong. But if it's 90% of what you would have done, that's probably going to be good enough. The world's not going to end.
Yeah. I have a silly joke that I tell myself. We're saving PDFs, not saving lives. Like it's okay. So I think that helps for me at least. We have a question around scaling teams. Thoughts on the ideal team size? Will Larson suggested 8 as a magic number.
I can't say that I've done, I want to say, very rigid academic research or anything on it, but in my mind, 6 to 8 would be a good number as well. Or Jeff Bezos' idea of a 2-pizza team. If you've got a small enough team that people can actually kind of engage with each other and have some form of a relationship that you can literally just go to your colleague and go, hi, can you please help me with this? As opposed to feeling like I have to log a support ticket for this other person sitting in another building who's somehow part of my team, but I've never actually met them. Like at that point, I think your team structure isn't going to work. But yeah, in summary, 6 to 8, I think is good.
Nice. We have a book recommendation question. List of 3 books you recommend for CTOs in the current digital age. I know you've already dropped a few. Are there any others you maybe want to mention?
So I would consider the CTO role as being both a leadership and a technical role. So I'd probably cover books or include books that cover both. I haven't spoken about Drive by Dan Pink. That's also a very good one. I spoke about Peopleware. I spoke about the Mythical Man Month, Turn the Ship Around. I would actually like to maybe do a post about books after this. Because as I was trying to prep for this, I figured there's actually a lot of books that I refer to, and I think it might be nice just to put them in a write-up.
I think that would be amazing. So audience, connect with Riaan. He will share something in the next coming weeks. Cool. What defines a good leader and what defines a good manager, in your opinion?
I think a good leader can relate to people and adapt to the people in their team. Like where is everyone? What do they need right now? How do I actually engage with them to help them do the best work that they can? I think a good manager is also good at prioritizing and juggling many different things, and deciding what should I focus on? What should I push out? Like a good manager to me is like good management at times is almost an optimization problem. But I think then we're also talking about maybe project management a bit more so than people management. But that is actually quite a broad question that would, I think, require some more thought. But in summary, I think good leader can relate to people and deal with people in the way that's appropriate to the individual. And a good manager can juggle many different things and kind of find the optimal solution in all of them. I think ultimately a lot of it, and the reason I got into taking the love for systems and all of that, as you move up, you just get to deal with different systems. It's systems of people, organizational systems, systems of processes. So being able to really manage those systems well, I think makes you a good manager.
I love that. Just going through all the questions, there's so many, and I think we're maybe going a little bit broad in the context of the questions, but let's see how we can get through them. How do you manage talent pipelines and succession planning? I know you don't have a lot of context, but
so depending on the scale of the organization, if you actually have a good talent manager who can help you make sense of kind of where are you right now, what skills do people actually have, what skills do you need, what skills are kind of contained within one or two individuals, and therefore the bus factor is high. And then again, relating to people and being able to know that this particular individual has the right skill set, maybe the right character is not quite the right word, but who is actually going to be a good fit to take over from someone in a different role. So it's the same thing around not every senior developer is necessarily going to be a good leader. So when you start thinking about succession planning for leaders, like if you look at your team, if you actually know the people, like who's going to be the right candidate to eventually replace the leader. And that might not mean the most senior developer, because your technical ability, again, is not what's going to make you a great leader.
Yeah. Thanks. Okay, let's answer another one from Byron. How do we navigate the direction towards CTO from software development? As a senior, where do I go now?
So it is going to depend on, to an extent, your organization. So earlier I spoke about companies that I think get a try to have these multiple different career paths. You can go be a technology specialist, you can be a team leader, you can be an architect, whatever else you want. I think find the kind of role that resonates with you. I think ultimately the thing I've found as almost a pattern of sorts is at senior dev, you get to this point in your career where your options kind of diverge. You go specialist or architect or manager, and then they kind of come together again at the CTO level. So you can almost take any of those paths, but I think what you're ultimately going to have to be cognizant of is the range of things you have to understand and worry about becomes a lot broader. So the fact that you might take the architect route to become a CTO doesn't mean all the experience you would have gained if you took the management track instead becomes irrelevant. It means there's a gap that you're going to have to fill when you want to move to CTO. And yeah, don't shy away from difficult challenges, difficult projects. Just get yourself thrown in the deep end. That's probably where you're going to learn the skills you need.
Love that. Okay, let's just see. I'm just going through the questions now. Okay, something about culture. How do you ensure that your communication is clear and understood by the whole team? What tips can you share?
I think when I listen to someone tell me something, what I would often do is I would repeat it back to them in the way that I heard it. Because I think often we lose detail as well. There was one of the questions you spoke about earlier. There was a story that came to mind. It sounds a little bit, I want to say fluffy, but I was on this management training course years and years ago. And one of the things they had us do was build this little Lego dog. And only the team leader could actually see the model that we had to recreate. And the rest of the team had to listen to the instructions to build it. So because I'm very analytical and all of that, I was like, so on the base plate, like 2 dots to the right and 1 away from the top, put a little 2x4 block in blue or whatever. And I explained it in a lot of detail. And when I turned around, they had built completely the wrong thing. And then the trainer was like, wait, why didn't you just tell them to build a dog? And I think as a communicator, being able to go like, this is what I want you to do, but this is actually what we're working towards. Just making sure that people can understand that as well.
It's balancing the vision versus the nitty-gritty detail and bringing them together.
And sometimes you just got to repeat information as well. Like if you feel someone might not be on the same page, you can also just sit down with them individually. And then the big benefit in tech is we've got whiteboards. So like get a bunch of people around a whiteboard, grab some markers, and if someone grabs the marker out of your hand to scribble something out, that's a good thing. It means we're all getting on the same page.
I think we have time for one more question. It's been so great to see so many questions from the audience. What would you say are best practices or techniques for company leadership in ensuring their managers or leaders are performing well? I've noticed that often managers are implicitly incentivized to maintain the status quo rather than making the hard changes required to improve engineering performance.
It actually becomes almost a metric question in my mind. And I think when you're in a very large organization where you've got limited control over what actually gets measured, that becomes a lot more challenging. But I think if you can get to a metric that indicates what is actually valuable, and that can then start driving the right behavior. So the DORA metrics, things like how often do you deploy, that to me is a much better metric than trying to track productivity by lines of code or something ridiculous like that. Because some metrics are easy to fudge, and if you've got the wrong metrics, you're just going to drive the wrong behavior. So I think it is actually, and again, if you're in a large organization where you have zero control over like what comes from the top, it's going to be a lot harder to do, because I think often your metrics become almost more, I want to say, accounting based in nature. Like you're working on whatever is going to be good for the balance sheet or the income statement, and not what is good for software delivery. But then also just being able to, again, the CTO role, how do you bridge that gap between technology and the CFO? Like, how do you sit down with the people who actually provide these incentives and convince them to offer incentives that will actually deliver value? Because again, bad incentives lead to really bad results. It's like the Cobra effect.
Awesome. Thank you. There was a lot of audience questions, so thank you for answering those so well on the fly. Audience, that is a wrap for today's Q&A. If anything, Riaan's journey reminds us that there's no single path to leadership, and that learning and unlearning and growing along the way is what really counts. We will have the recording available soon if you want to revisit any insights. And we are hosting more of these sessions in the upcoming months. So if you'd like to join a future one, you can just select from the poll on screen now. We are also running a tech leadership survey to understand what leadership actually looks like and feels like right now. So if you want to help shape this conversation, you'll be redirected to the survey once the webinar ends, and you can share your thoughts as well. Riaan, a huge thank you for sharing your reflections and hard-won wisdom. And thanks to everyone for joining. Big congrats also to Brendan Durand for engaging throughout the session. An OfferZen shirt will be on its way to you shortly. Hope everyone has a good Wednesday. We'll see you at the next one. Cool.
Thanks, Alex. Thanks, everyone.